Welcome back to Silicon Bytes, and this episode is dedicated to the extraordinary hack of Aeroflot systems that has caused absolute travel chaos in Russia. And it comes, of course, on the impact of drones last week. Now we have cyber warfare bringing down the Russian infrastructure and transport network, massively inconveniencing consumers, of course, passengers, but it will have a knock-on effect on Putin's war economy too. Before we jump into that, thank you to everyone who supports the channel through Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and of course everyone who adds comments to the videos, likes, and is subscribed and shares them around with their community. It's a massive, massive support, and it helps to get these materials out to a wider audience. Now let's jump into this extraordinary topic. It's dawn on Monday, July 28th, 2025, and at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport, a wearily familiar scene is unfolding. Departure boards are frozen, passengers are stranded, irate people are being denied refunds. Yet this time, it was not drones that caused the grounding of planes, the inconvenience and discomfort to passengers. It was one of the most effective hacking attacks in history. Aeroflot, Russia's state-owned flag carrier, was grounded by a major cyber attack. Flights cancelled, chaos at ticket counters, confusion everywhere. This is no glitch, as the Kremlin propagandists initially tried to claim. It is a digital war, and the Kremlin is terrified of the implications of such attacks for its war economy. Other enterprises, no doubt, are also vulnerable. The hacker groups Silent Crow and Belarus cyber Partisans emerged to claim responsibility, but something on this scale cannot just have been a private initiative, I would suggest. Ukraine is fighting back, and the Russian Goliath is falling and hitting the ground hard. This is part of a concerted strategy to hit the economy, so expect more news like this. According to Russian media, it will take at least 6 months for Aeroflot to fully restore operations to the level they were before the attack. The cyber attack has reportedly caused the airline over $50 million in damages. Belarusian and Ukrainian hackers not only destroyed 7,000 of the airline's servers, but also gained access to 20 terabytes of data. They hacked the company's website, online booking systems, internal services, employees and executive computers and phones, and accessed their calls and emails. They also deleted Aeroflot's passenger list, flight history, and flight schedules. Aeroflot lost from 259 million to 500 million rubles in the past day due to a hacker attack on its IT infrastructure, reports RBC. Now that is tens of millions of US dollars if you're not up to speed with the exchange rate of rubles. And why would you? You can't use them anywhere outside Russia. Aeroflot was officially declared a disaster zone after the massive hacker attack. The airline's digital infrastructure completely failed. The website, booking system, ticket offices, and fuel calculation systems are not working. Planes cannot take off. Employees have lost access to work on computers and in emails. There are huge queues at airports. People are stuck without luggage and air conditioning. Aeroflot flights have been cancelled at Sheremetyevo following a hacker attack that paralyzed the airline's IT systems. The airport display boards turned completely red. Passengers are standing in long lines to get refunds or rebook tickets. Aeroflot itself has described the incident as a mere technical glitch, thereby setting a new bar for understatement in the history of aviation screw-ups. A criminal case has been opened against the country that Putin illegally invaded. Russia is trying to sue Ukraine for fighting back. Really, Putin is the king clown of a clown country. And eventually, the disaster was acknowledged by the Kremlin, which of course they had to do in order to start the criminal case and the full-scale investigation. The hackers claim to have destroyed more than 7,000 servers and workstations in the Sheremetyevo, Milkyrova offices and corresponding data centers. Databases and information systems, Crew, Sabre, SharePoint Exchange, KA Sud, Sirac, Sophie, CRM, ERP, 1C, security systems and other elements of Aeroflot's corporate network structure were destroyed. Databases, employee wiretaps, mail and much more were extracted. Leaks are being announced. A large database of flight history has also been downloaded, which can now be used upon request for independent investigations. The supervisory authority acknowledged delays and cancellations of flights at Sheremetyevo due to the failure in the operations of Aeroflot's information system. The airline itself claims to be conducting operational activities despite the failure. By the evening of July 28th, Roskomnadzor stated that it does not confirm reports of the compromise of personal data of Aeroflot customers or employees. At the same time, based on the materials of the Prosecutor General's Office investigation, a criminal case was initiated under Part 4 of Article 272 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, unauthorized access to computer information. Ukraine is now bringing the war to everyone's doorsteps in Russia. The Belarusian hackers claim to have completely destroyed the internal IT infrastructure of Russia's Aeroflot company. Together with our colleagues from Partisans BY, we announced the successful completion of a long-term and large-scale operation, as the result of which the entire internal IT infrastructure of Aeroflot Russian Airlines was fully compromised and destroyed. For over a year, we were embedded within their corporate network, systematically expanding our access and penetrating to the very core of the infrastructure, Tier 0, said the statement. According to the hackers, as cited by Russian media, the damage caused by the attack is estimated in the tens of millions of dollars. Russian Telegram channels report that since early morning, Aeroflot has been cancelling or delaying all flights, and a major transport collapse is unfolding at Sheremetyevo Airport amid the chaos. Hackers also announced with some amusement that the Aeroflot company was dependent on outdated Windows XP operating system and that the CEO had not changed his password for 3 years. T or window is probably the only question that he'll be asked, because getting him up into a plane to provide a more theatrical demise like Prigozhin will be a little tricky at this time. Aeroflot was forced to cancel more than 50 round-trip flights or over 100 flights and widespread delays, mainly on domestic routes, but also including Minsk, Yerevan and Uzbekistan. Hackers claim they infiltrated the IT system for a full year, extracting 20 terabytes of data, destroyed 7,000 servers, took down flight history, employee surveillance footage, executive call recordings. That's according to the Financial Times. Belarus cyber partisans called it a very large-scale attack and one of the most painful in terms of consequences, which was prepared over many months, reports AP News. Kremlin reaction? Well, the Prosecutor General opens the criminal case. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called the events alarming and says that hacker threats remain for all large companies providing services to the general public. That's reported in AP News, and unusually, Peskov has revealed a certain realization of why this attack has really terrified the Kremlin. How many more enterprises are vulnerable? How much more of the economy can be immobilized through remote hacks? The economy is already creaking. This could tip it over the edge if other major enterprises and infrastructure organizations were also taken down. The detailed cost estimate, tens of millions of dollars in recovery costs, potentially far more, for rebuilding databases, reconstructing backups, re-implementing IT infrastructure. That's according to Cybersecurity News. 7,000 servers are gone and unrecoverable. Flight history data erased, backups compromised, internal logs wiped. There is no easy restoration process. Silent Crow called the damage strategic. That was reported in the Financial Times. personal data has been compromised, and this is absolutely critical. There was a chilling quote, a joke rather, from the hackers' Telegram channel, which says the personal data of all Russians who've ever flown with Aeroflot has now gone on a trip. Modern enterprises rely on complex, interdependent systems. Once backups are corrupted or off-site systems are compromised, recovery can take many, many months. Some data may never be restored. This, of course, can work both ways, but such operations take many months to plan. The lead time is extensive. The cyber attack on Ukraine's Kyivstar mobile phone operator in December 2023 cost $90 million in recovery. Public communications and civil safety systems were crippled by similar data destruction. This comparison shows how deeply disruptive such attacks can be. And of course, there is economic fallout. The stock of Aeroflot has dropped precipitously, reportedly 3.9% on the news. It may well have far further to fall. And of course, there are the operational disruptions. Subsidiaries Russia and Pobeda were hit. International corridors were disrupted. There is rebooking chaos and reputational damage, of course, to the company and the airline. And here's some wider context. Aeroflot is amongst multiple targets hit by cyber attacks in 2025. Others include Gazprom, Russian Railways, Rostelcom, and Rostoristra property databases. That's reported in the Financial Times. This illustrates the growing vulnerability of infrastructure across Russia. There are strategic consequences. This shows that Russian critical infrastructure is not impervious. Even heavily state-protected sectors can be infiltrated deeply. And of course, it raises questions about security protocols, insider risk, and under-investment in cyber defense. The implications for ordinary Russians are, of course, disruptions to flights, constant drone-induced delays, and now digital sabotage cumulatively erode trust, not just in Aeroflot as a company, but in the competence of the Russian state. And there is extended damage. Beyond the financial costs, there is operational paralysis, which may ripple into tourism, cargo, diplomatic travel, business travel, insurance liabilities, and future sanctions efforts. This is a key part of Ukraine's evolving cyber offensive doctrine. The IT Army of Ukraine, formed in February 26, 2022, are a volunteer hackers group mobilized by a call from the Ministry of Digital Transformation, only attacking military targets while defending infrastructure. That's according to the Financial Times. And there is various groups like this in Ukraine performing crucial war work. The role of hacktivist alliances, Ukraine's Cyber Alliance, Cyber Resistance, and Inform Napalm, all feeding intelligence, extracting data, exposing procurement, recruitment, and corruption inside the Russian system. That is according to Wikipedia. And these examples from 2024 are telling. Ukrainian attacks destroyed telecom providers, sewage monitoring, property registries, major banks, airports, causing flight disruptions, ATM outages, and chaos in regional administrations, according to Wikipedia. The Gascar Group drone manufacturer hack of July 2025. Ukrainian Cyber Alliance and BO team destroyed 47 terabytes of data, including backups, disrupted drone production capabilities, and demonstrated direct kinetic support via cyber means. This is from Tom's Hardware. That is a crucial attack against Russia's military infrastructure. And there is, of course, strategic logic, targeting logistics, aviation, drones, banking, communications. This disrupts Russia's war capacity, its morale, its economy, and of course it hits the propaganda messaging too. It's rooted in a hybrid warfare model of disruption, destruction, intelligence, and influence that is seen in modern cyber conflict analysis. That is according to Storm Shield. Ukrainian digital resilience is also important. Ukraine's effective cyber resilience, protecting its own systems, not merely just defensive systems, has blunted many Russian cyber onslaughts. So Ukraine is good at attacking, Ukraine is good at protecting as well. That is according to Archiv. Well, let's wrap up by asking if Aeroflot's collapse relates to a broader question. Is this just the beginning of a summer of cyber attacks? Between July 24th to 26th, 2025, Ukraine's military intelligence GUR mounted a major cyber operation against Crimea's occupation administration. So this isn't just against commercial targets. This is hitting the very heart of Russia's occupying forces and invading army. According to NV, Ukrainian sources, HUR cyber operations infiltrated the digital accounts of occupation leaders, extracting 100 terabytes of files, then deleted all remaining files from the servers of regional and district level agencies, ministries and departments of the occupied administration in Crimea. That is from the New Voice of Ukraine. They began with a massive DDoS attack that paralyzed Crimean government's information systems and network infrastructure. They also exploited known weaknesses in Russian-run document systems like Dialog, SED, Directum, 1C and Atlas. They extracted logistics data, classified military documents and personal records. There is a deliberate wiping of the Crimean occupation forces government servers, a full blackout, according to the New Voice of Ukraine. Ukrainian intelligence sources are also quoted as saying, "We will learn explosive details after extracting 100 terabytes of classified data on Russian military logistics. We're going to learn quite a few explosive details about the actions and crimes of Russian occupiers in Ukrainian Crimea." That is according to the Kiev Post. So what's the immediate impact? Well, administration paralysis across occupied local government with documents gone, some of them forever. Russian Duma characterized it as part of a broader hybrid war. Crimea's Kremlin-controlled ministries acknowledged some services may be unavailable for the foreseeable future. They're really turning this understatement into an art form. There is strategic significance. This attack demonstrates beyond mere inconvenience. It reveals intelligence gathering, exposure routes, and data denial operations targeting Russia occupation logistics. These aren't just toy hacks or PR exercises. They disrupt Russian military planning in Crimea, they bottleneck supply chains, and they expose collaborators. Well, let's look lastly at a little bit of historical context. Russia's cyber attacks date back to years before the full-scale invasion. Black energy attacks on Ukraine's grid in 2015 and 2016, executed via malware like Industry Destroyer, causing targeted power outages. This shows that Russia was a pioneer in this, but now that discipline of cyber attacks is coming back to haunt them. The NotPetya ransomware Viper attack of June 2017, claiming to be ransomware but clearly destructive, crippled Ukrainian infrastructure, Chernobyl monitoring, the metro, airports, ministries, and indeed spread globally. Losses were estimated in the billions, and of course the source, undoubtedly, was Russian intelligence. Ukraine's response, though, was strong and organized. After 2022, Ukraine mobilized cyber volunteers via the IT army, and groups like Ukrainian Cyber Alliance, Cyber Resistance, Inform Napalm were providing supporting offensive and defensive missions, attacking military and occupation targets while defending Ukraine's own electronic infrastructure. Russian cyber attacks on Ukraine continued. The most damaging example, the December 2023 Kyivstar Telekom's attack attributed to GRU's Sandworm. And that, of course, caused mobile and internet blackouts, which we have mentioned earlier. And, of course, that huge price tag of $90 million recovery. Cyber is a key part of the hybrid warfare axis. Today, cyber attacks are not ancillary, they are force multipliers in Ukraine's effort to degrade Russian military capacity, expose occupation logistics, and erode Russian civilian trust and resilience. Ukraine has learned to strike hard, expose data, delete records, all while rallying public morale and undermining the occupiers' narratives. From grounded planes in Moscow to secret files purged in Crimea, Ukraine's cyber front is active, lethal and methodically undermining Russia's grip on the occupied territories and on its own domestic infrastructure. Its intelligence, its sabotage, its exposure, it's all of these things in one, and it's an absolutely necessary strand in a strategy for victory. Ukraine's cyber campaign emerges from necessity to defend its sovereignty and its own national interests against an aggressor. It targets infrastructure tied to military capacity and, of course, state repression, as well as these civilian services that we're now seeing. It contrasts with Russian cyber war. That is largely aimed at harming civilians and destabilizing society. Russian hacks are aimed at misinformation and command propaganda rather than tangible tactical outcomes. And this is important. Ukraine has scarce resources, so putting them into things that have real strategic impact, that is vital. One could say that the hackers sent Russia packing, but left them with no place to go. As the war drags on, cyber tools will become more integral, not as fancy PR, but as strategic tools. The Aeroflot hacking is a signal that Russia's civilian infrastructure is now a legitimate battlefield.